Um, during During this series, we've been hearing from leaders across the country who examine how everyday and intentional practices of humanity, relationship building, and shared responsibility shape our communities and where people experience dignity, voice, and collective care. We're really honored to be joined by three powerful movement leaders today in the early care and education field. Who'll share reflections from their experiences and expertise anchored by this important question that we'll be delving into today. How do practices of interconnectedness and interdependence deepen both the feeling and practice of belonging? This draws on what Prentis Hemphill describes as resting in the collective. We're excited to learn more from today's conversation about what intentional belonging, interdependence, and agency looks like in practice across multiple settings, from the classroom to the halls of state policy. As we begin our time together, I'd like to acknowledge that we are continuing to strengthen our language justice practices, and this webinar series will be available in Spanish with interpretation services provided through our partners at the Community Language Cooperative based in Colorado. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Jasmine to join us to provide us with a brief orientation.
Thank you so much, Diana. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Jasmine. I'm here on behalf of the CLC, or the Community Language Cooperative. I'm here and really happy to facilitate a space of language justice in the form of simultaneous interpretation into Spanish throughout this webinar. So if you are seeing the screen right now, you can see what the globe will look like once we turn on this function. So it won't appear right now, but you'll see that pop up at the bottom of your screen. At that point, if you're not fully bilingual in English and Spanish, I ask that you please select your language of preferred participation. You can just select that little globe, click on the language that you want to listen in, and nothing else that you have to do after that. I ask y'all keep in mind your pace and your clarity. Let me know if you have any issues with the audio. I'm always accessible via chat, and I'll just repeat this in Spanish. Buenas, mi nombre es Yasmin, estoy aquí de parte de la CLC y súper feliz de estar aquí apoyándoles a facilitar este espacio de justicia del lenguaje en forma de interpretación simultánea al español durante este seminario web. Para acceder a esta función, ahorita no pueden ver el globo, pero van a ver este globo terráqueo que aparece aquí en la pantalla, en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Ahí van a poder hacer clic. Y si no son completamente bilingües en inglés y en español, ahí van a poder seleccionar su idioma de preferencia. Cualquier cosa que se les ofrezca, pueden mandar mensaje por el chat, pero en realidad solo tienen que hacer eso y les pido que tengan en mente su velocidad y su claridad. Y cualquier cosa, como mencioné, cualquier cosa que se les ofrezca, me pueden mandar mensaje por el chat si es que no escuchan bien o tienen cualquier problema. Muchísimas gracias. Ya podemos comenzar. Thank you all so much. We can go ahead and get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jasmine. At this time, please take a moment to select the language that best suits your needs by clicking that globe icon located at the bottom of your Zoom window. And you can follow the instructions listed here on your screen of selecting that language. Today's webinar will be recorded and posted on the Now Innovation Forum the next few days. We encourage you to engage with us and share what resonates with you in the chat box by submitting questions there or in our Q&A feature, and we'll have an opportunity for our guest speakers to answer questions later in the hour. While we'll only be with together for a brief time, it'll be packed with stories from the field, lessons for all of us to take back to our own practices in our own communities. We wanted to share a brief overview of Vital Village Networks and our Now initiative, followed by remarks from our moderator and featured speakers. Later, you'll be able to pose questions before we wrap up with a few announcements of ways to stay connected. Whether you're joining us for the first time or have been with the village for a while, I'd like to offer a brief overview of Vital Village Networks. We are a collective of change makers committed to pioneering innovative and sustainable approaches to transforming child, family, and community well-being. We are made up of partners across the country, rooted in Boston, all of whom are connected through the Networks of Opportunity for Child Wellbeing, better known as the Now Initiative. We are bonded through our guiding principles of creating spaces for shared belonging, learning, engaging, and transforming our communities together. To learn more about our work and share your stories, we invite you to visit our website where you'll find a variety of tools and resources, along with stories of leaders working collaboratively to shift what it means for our children, our families, and our communities to thrive. For our webinar series this year, the central question we've been exploring is how do we design systems that cultivate shared humanity, connection, and agency in everyday practice? Given particularly the political and economic climate of the moment, this question is critical and timely. Belonging is a central guiding principle here at the Village and central to our vision of creating a world where we all experience dignity and connection in our everyday lives. We're grateful for the wisdom, the partnership, and the opportunity to learn from local leaders, including those you'll hear from today in the early care and education field around this important topic. I'm very excited. I'm honored to welcome our moderator for today's conversation, Malkia Singleton Oforu Agekum, who serves as the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director with Parent Child Plus. You can learn more about Malkia and her powerful work in our speaker bio handout that'll be shared in the chat. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Malkia, who'll provide a few introductory remarks for today's discussion. Thank you so much, Malkia, for joining us.
Thank you, Diana, and welcome everyone. Would love to see in the chat where folks are signing in. Always love to see that. But thank you so much for joining us today. I've been connected with Vital Village Networks for probably a good 5 years now. And so whenever I'm able to be in a space with folks from the network, I count it as a blessing. So today, as Diana shared, our title is Resting in the Collective. And so we hope that this invites you to deeply think about what it means to be connected to one another, and not just as individuals, but as members of a broader community. In a world that often emphasizes individuals and individuality and independence, this conversation asks us to consider a different way of being, one rooted in interdependence, shared responsibility, and the understanding that our well-being is deeply connected to the well-being of others. So I hope that this conversation not only sparks new ideas, but also reminds us that lasting change happens when we work together, learn from one another, and build systems that reflect the strengths, wisdom, and leadership of the communities they serve. So now I have the pleasure of introducing you all to our esteemed panelists today. So we have, and I'm going to actually allow them to introduce themselves, but we have Miss Dorothy Williams from Dottie's Family Childcare and Giovanna Archuleta from Early Childhood Program Director of LNANL Foundation. So we're going to start with Miss Dorothy to give a brief introduction, and then Giovanna, and then after that, we're going to dive into some questions. And as Diana said, we will have time for question and answer. So please think about any questions you have and put them in the Q&A or the chat. So Miss Dorothy, please introduce yourself to the village.
I certainly will. Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to be here. I have been in family child care now for 18 years in Dorchester. We are licensed for 10, and I'm also a Boston Pre-K participant. So I am very proud of the work that we've been able to do. We cater specifically to our community, so therefore we make sure that the people that we serve, 50% of our students are voucher students, and that's important to us. We also focus on children who are experiencing homelessness. And so I am an advocate for that, and I am certainly trying to do my advocacy work with data and backing it up with research. Next
Thank
slide.
you so much.
Thank you.
Giovanna, can you share a little bit about yourself and the important work that you're doing?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jovan Archuleta. I come from one of the tribes in New Mexico. I'm from northern New Mexico, and I've been working with the Lana Foundation. It's kind of a funny relationship. I've started in 2017, went to work for the new Early Childhood Education Care Department within New Mexico, and then came back to the Lana Foundation, continue to work in community and with community on building systems, early childhood systems. So we've helped to build out home visiting systems in tribal communities.
Mm-hmm.
Our biggest task now is help to build out the supply of childcare, and with the launch of universal childcare in New Mexico and making sure we're getting to those rural and tribal communities. So I have been
That's
here for about 3.5 years now, which is
wow. Wow, wow, wow. Amazing, amazing work. So I'm eager to have everybody hear a little bit more about your thoughts. So we're going to dive into our first question, okay? So structures and systems, they do a lot of work of excellence in our communities. How are you working to transform early childhood care and education systems in order to ensure inclusion and belonging? Miss Dorothy, would you like to start us off on that?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. I think transforming systems is important, but sustaining inclusion, belonging, and community agency requires long term commitment. We need to start investing in relationship building, professional development, and equitable access to resources for families and providers. We also need to have structures that promote collaboration across all sectors. There's some gaps that need to be filled. And so that would also include, of course, family child care providers, schools, health services, and community organizations. I think accountability should go beyond compliance. It really is important to make sure that families feel heard, valued, connected, and empowered. And most importantly, I think families must have a voice in decision making. You know, it's one thing to create something, but they have to live with that. So sustainable changes happens, I think, when communities help shape the systems that serve them because they have buy-in, if you will.
Without question, you're definitely speaking my language, Miss Dorothy. Joanna, what about you, and especially, in the tribal communities that you work in?
I was thinking about this question, and it goes back to 2018 when I first started with the Lana Foundation to build out childcare plans and early childhood plans.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on this grant that was like 18 months. And I think any of you know when you're starting a new project in community, it's just 18 months of like relationship building, and we had a lot of coffee. And at the very last of those 18 months, we were scrambling to put this plan together. But it took a very long time to build those relationships with community. I come from those communities, so
Yeah.
it was a little, it didn't take as long.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but when you think of belonging, it's being included from the start. We started
Mm-hmm.
talking about, oh, what's this neighbor doing? What's that neighbor doing? What are these children learning? How do we incorporate community culture, community language, infuse culture of the home?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is how we have slowly, and that's really been the pillar of how we do our work. Even as we build out childcare now, it needs to start with community input before we
Yes.
start building.
Yes, yes. And I love what you said, sometimes that can look like, yes, we have been having coffee for 18 months, but that's what it's going to take to really build that foundation for folks to really get to know each other and trust each other, right? And that doesn't always come on the timeline of, say, a funder or, it's so important. That's a message I'm really appreciating today as I think about different projects we're launching as Parent Child Plus in different cities. It really does take that long to build that trust. So the next question we have is in Prentis Hemphill's book, What It Takes to Heal, they say to belong is to rest in the collective, to be woven into the all. What does it look like in your work to embody this practice of interconnectedness and interdependency? And what are some specific and like tangible practices that you support to really provide that radical connection? And Giovanna, you want to start us off this time?
Yeah, I think that when you come from communities where that is already woven into you from the time you were born, and it's been part of your being for generations, collectiveness, community is just what you do and how you show
Mm-hmm.
up. And
Mm-hmm.
you know that this work is not done alone. It's literally, it takes a village. Um, it takes a village to build systems, it takes a village to raise children. And so when you are doing this work and when you have built your network and your trusted partners and you've had coffee for a whole year,
Mm-hmm.
um, the work becomes easy. The work becomes belonging to people from the community. It's those accountability, of taking it back to community.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned, when we wrote those plans, we would write them and I would take all of their words. And then the next month we would read to make sure that I was getting the story.
Mm-hmm.
I was being told correct.
So important. What I kind of hear you saying, not just words but deeds. It has to you have to live it, and it's something that really is probably a natural value already, within you or your community. Miss Dorothy, what about you?
Well, I've had an opportunity to work with families because I am family childcare. So, therefore,
Mm-hmm.
the majority of the clients that I have live in my community. So, therefore, we are already connected. It could be a church, it could be anywhere. I have had my students come back to me. I had a couple of weeks ago, one of the people I took care of. Listen, couldn't walk when he came here. Now he's 16 years old. So, and remembered Miss Dottie and came back to see how we were doing. So, when you have that kind of connection where you
Mm-hmm.
are remembered and the students take the time to come back, for me, it says everything. It's
Yeah.
better than a paycheck because what it says is that what we did was impactful enough for this young man to come to grateful for the kind of connection that we've been able to make here with the community that we are serving. And I think it's important to remember that there are future, you know, their systems and have to develop a mastery of that, be something that's going to be successful for them long term.
Mm-hmm.
And saying that means commitment, meaning we have to make sure we do our due diligence as educators to be open minded, reassess systems, and really take a look at how impactful we are.
Just to include on that, Dorothy, is consistency. And I brought that up in our conversation, is
Yes,
when you work with communities who have had a lot of trauma,
yes,
consistency is so important.
yes, it
Even if
is.
you don't have anything planned and all you do is have that coffee, but you're still
Yeah.
showing up.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and I find that in family childcare, and what's unique about us is that we can take an infant and be a part of that infant's world and family's world up until age 5. Now,
Mm-hmm.
from the educational perspective, you don't see that happening. If they're in the center, they're going to be going from room to room and they're going to see a new set of people. And I am very thankful that the staff I've had from the beginning. And so that, continuity of care, again, is impactful as well. Just to
Mm-hmm.
mirror what you're saying, Giovanna.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I'm over here taking notes. Both of you. Yes, thank you. These are some things I need to remind myself and my team of that consistency is so important, even when they don't open the door for you, right? You still showed up. Those things really matter, right?
Yeah, yes. Stay in the race.
Nice. Right. That's right. That's right. So both of you have talked about how important it is that families are involved in the beginning. That they have knowledge and like power, that they have a space in all of this, right? Um, and so, can you share about how your work promotes increasing agency of families in these systems?
Mhm.
Ms. Dorothy, you want to start us off this time?
Oh, certainly. For us, because I am part of the Boston Pre-K program, we have an opportunity to work with our parents, and we have a parent advocacy person who does that. And we're one of the things that I love about working with them is that I have access to additional support services, and that would include language, because I think that this is important as well, because people feel more comfortable when they have access to information in their own tongue. And so, I commend those of you who really honor and respect that. And I would say the Boston Public Schools, they really do that. And I think that's important for the parents that I'm serving. And so I think that, reducing the language barrier, making sure that, and that also includes the written word. They, you
Mhm.
know, they are absolutely, really, really, I think, wonderfully posed to do that. So not only their applications are translated in another language, which can be extremely useful for parents who may be under a lot of stress and may not necessarily want to fill a form out. I know sometimes I'm like, oh, why do I have to do this? But, paper is everything these days. So,
Mhm.
I say that to share that I think that we have to take into consideration systemically when we're dealing with forms. Can we streamline them? Can they go across sectors? So, for example, at Boston Public, they fill an application out online. Then they have to come to me and fill another application out. So, how do we streamline that process so that maybe some of the data could go from one place to another? So, there's some things
Mhm.
systemically that we can really take a look at in terms of how are we really doing this? Because again, say if I'm a homeless mom, I have two children, and I have to fill out the same information out 5 times. I'm already stressed out. Now you've given me some additional work, to add to my already maybe crazy day, for
Mhm.
example. So I think taking a look at systems that are not going to be burdensome, and what looks good to you, are we asking the right questions? And so I think again that collaboration, that community is important. We want them to buy into it. It's like, how can I say this? The person who's on the floor, if you will, say you're in a retail environment and then you're working the floor. That person who's working the floor, they can see all the mistakes, but they can also make suggestions to correct them. Whereas upper management may not necessarily have that information. So I think what's wonderful and unique about being, and again, I'm speaking to family child care, we have boots on the ground.
Yeah.
We see what's working and what's not working.
Mhm. Mhm. And would you agree, oftentimes those are the last people asked for their opinion sometimes,
Yes, which is
fortunately.
unfortunate because
Right.
the whole process could really be streamlined if you went to the people who, number one, are doing the work and who are directly affected by this. Remember, they're the ones that have to do the performance. And so, you tie things into performance review. I mean, it's a whole kind of thing that goes with this, but I shared this to say that, that little thing is called communication, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Mhm.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Having that open
I
communication
go,
is extremely important.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just take a step back to this 19-year-old mom that I once was,
Mhm.
of what I could have used and how I could have really been valued for my voice and my experiences going through these systems like childcare assistance, like how do you sign up for SNAP. I was a mom that had to pack a little lunch and we went on our day and we had to go through all of these systems, signing up for services that took the whole day with a 1-year-old, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so I bring that now back into my work at the Lano Foundation and helping to build out family leadership. We're about to launch our very first inaugural cohort, which we've gotten 17 applications for. We can only take 14 right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's to bring these collective, rest in the collective, bring these parents together to learn from one another. I'm very big on peer-to-peer learning. We all bring knowledge, we all learn from each other.
Yep.
And to understand what are the challenges, what's happening in your community, what barriers do you have in your community, but also what are the gifts that everyone has, and how can we advocate together? How can we work collectively to make our services stronger, to make our children stronger,
Mm-hmm.
and most importantly, to ensure that our children are being loved in many different ways. Some
Mm-hmm.
not the best.
Mm-hmm.
And a wise woman once told me, no parent wants to be a bad parent. We
Mm-hmm.
just have to learn together on how to parent and change and break cycles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really love that, and I would love to hear at the end of that process, how it all goes. One of the most I would say like poignant moments in my career I had not that long ago, which is kind of sad. It took this long, but and I want to say it was around COVID, so it was about 2020. In our program in Philadelphia, we had the opportunity to participate in something called the Parent Innovation Institute, and it was all about learning about family-centered design and different things. But the thing that was unique, we had a team of 3 staff and 2 parents. We really had to, really dig into what worked, what didn't work in the program. What would you change? It was really big on getting that family voice, and it was just such a transformative experience that I really wish I had that experience a lot earlier. But and the thing I took from it, the biggest lesson I took is just to listen. Sometimes just to listen, not to try to solve, but just to listen. And when you listen, you can just really learn so much. So thank you both for sharing your thoughts. This next question, this is for you, Miss Dorothy. Can you share more about what a community of care means to you, particularly for the families you work with?
Yes, absolutely. To me, a community of care would be a network of people and organizations working together to support children and families with compassion, respect, and a shared sense of responsibility. It means that
Mm-hmm.
families would have, um, you know, have some way to navigate challenges, but they would not be alone. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that, for the families that I work with, especially those who are experiencing housing instability or have other type of hardships, a community of care would also include families like FCC providers, case managers, educators, and again, health professionals and community partners who communicate and collaborate to meet the family's needs. So again, and then with that, hopefully within that group of people, we can start developing the interconnected support systems. And then again, at its core, community of care is about belonging. It's about trust. It's
Mm-hmm.
about connection. COVID taught us a lesson about how important having a connection can be. That isolation took a toll on a lot of people. And it
Mm-hmm.
proves, I think, that, when we work together, families will feel supported, their children are going to experience greater stability, and everyone has a better opportunity to thrive. Both
Mm-hmm.
family, child cares, and providers and researchers will be able to help to assist in developing stronger relationships via open communications and building supportive communities.
For sure. So much richness in what you just shared. And what like if you think back over your career, Miss Dorothy, what are some ways that you've seen evidence, of families thriving in a community of care?
I think that when you have additional support services, one of the things about the Boston Pre-K program that I really enjoy is the fact that if I have to have, for example, mental health services or any type of support services once a child is over 3 years of age, they have access to that. If I was an independent family child care provider and not have joined in with this particular group, I would not be able to offer those types of services after the age of 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to really look at the, building, I think, bridges that help to fill in the gaps. And
Mm-hmm.
so Boston Public Schools, in terms of for additional support services, is able to provide that to Dottie's Family Childcare. And we are very grateful for that. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, when you're working with students who are at risk, they do come with multiple issues and concerns, and you do have to have the support services for them. And that should not stop at just the age of 3. And
Mm-hmm.
again, we go back to that continuity of care. If you're
Mm-hmm.
used to getting additional support services and all of a sudden 3 years old, everything has to stop and then you have to wait to be reassessed. No, this here assists in me being able to provide them with continuity. They come to me at 3, their services are going to be intact, and then I can continue the services up until they actually go into a Boston Public School system. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the that's the goal, because that means that I was able to meet the family's needs.
Right. Right.
I
And
just
that's the
wanted,
reason why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to touch on is like what we often hear, especially in northern New Mexico, where we have a very unique culture of, community, is that it goes beyond just like the physical and the mental care of children and families. It goes into the spiritual and the emotional well-being of families and making sure they're connected to grandparents, making sure they're connected to the culture, the language, the water, the land.
Mm-hmm. So important, and that's why it's so important to have that really deep understanding of your community, right?
Mhm.
So, Giovanna, this next question is for you. So, um, how can inclusion and belonging be embedded or like codified in early childhood education systems, policy at the state level? Now, that's a big leap. From being connected to the land and the water and the people in the heart. But how does that get codified into policies? And if you have any examples from your work, what has the journey been like?
Hmm. What's interesting about my own personal journey is we have been collaborating and collectively working with community for a very long time before the state created the State Department.
Mm,
And so when I was able to go to the state, we were able to bring, well, these coalitions, these collective impact groups that are coming together, they mean something. They're very
mhm,
important because
mhm,
we are New Mexico is a very large state.
mhm,
It's faster and easier for me to get to Colorado than it is to go to southern New Mexico.
mm,
And so we all have different and unique ideas and ways that families are raised and
yeah.
what's important to us. And so when we went to the state, we built out funding to be able to support and keep those those collective impact groups
Mhm,
going.
mhm,
And so right now the state funds 18 coalitions across New Mexico that
mm,
pull from parents, pull from community, pull from local organizations of what works for their families and children.
mhm.
It's not a policy, it wasn't codified, but it was a step. The
Yeah,
department's
for sure.
still very young, only 5 years
Mhm,
old.
mhm,
And within our own, I can speak for Northern New Mexico, we continue to meet and fundraise to keep our collective group coming together. And we don't do anything until we hear from this group of people across Northern New Mexico.
mhm.
on how we lead, how we build policies, how we advocate for policies, and how we
Mhm.
build systems. And that is something we do. I think what we can continue to work through this family fellowship is bringing their voice and elevating their voice to codify
Right,
policies.
right. Thank you. Thank you. I want to stay in touch with you, Jovan. I really want to hear about how this all turns out. So we have one final question that's before we open it up to Q&A. So again, attendees, please feel free to put any questions, thoughts, comments in the chat or the Q&A box, as that'll be our next section. Okay, so this last question is, what is needed to not only transform but sustain practices of inclusion, belonging, and community agency from your perspective? And then answer that piece, and then I'll have a follow-up question. So, what is needed not only to transform but sustain practices of inclusion, belonging, and community agency?
I think for me, it's really quick. It's making sure that we continue to include families,
Mm-hmm.
help to build their capacity. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
their families have so much knowledge, even when
Mm-hmm.
they think they don't. And the
Yes.
only way we're going to sustain programming is
Mm-hmm.
when those families have built their confidence, their self-efficacy, their
Mm-hmm.
advocacy skills to keep these
Right,
programs going.
right. And I think also to piggyback on that is it is important to when you're doing the advocacy to make sure that you have it from all levels. So not only is it important for the parents to be there and the children to be there, but also the policymakers need to be there. If you can, you know, really and truly get your person out there that is going to be able to, again, from a political standpoint, be able to listen to you and that you have opportunity to plant seeds and let people know what's actually going on because the politicians have no idea what we do on a daily basis unless we sit there and we let them know. And so
Mm-hmm.
being an advocate is one of the most important things I think that we can do because we have to share what we do and how we do it. The pandemic really put family child care on the map, if you will, and that's when people started recognizing our importance. Other than that, as far as our industry is concerned, we were, always considered as babysitters, and we are not. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that people have to really understand that there are very good programs out there, people who are qualified, who have the educational and the length of service to back up what they do and how they do it. And more importantly, a community of people who are willing to bring their children and then say they have another child, they'll bring that child back to
Yeah.
you. So,
Right.
I think that when you are established in the community, because you've been able to provide continuity of care, and more importantly, you've been able to make them feel that they are part of your establishment, that it becomes not mine, but it becomes ours.
Right. Right.
And that
Right.
when you have changed this to from an I to a we, you have a better way of being much more impactful in terms of how you're able to improve systems across the board.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. So, what types of investments and resources and accountability structures do you think are needed to really make those things happen? Another
Practical
question.
applications of policies, I think, and procedures,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between a policy and procedure and a practice. And if the
Okay.
two could mirror themselves and be in one accord, I think that type of level will really be much more sustainable as it is right now. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I might have a policy that says I can't wear open toed shoes. Say
Mm-hmm.
I work for a health center and OSHA says I can't wear open toed shoes. But you
Mm-hmm.
have people in the back in the nurses station with open toed shoes because it's 95 degrees, even in
Mm-hmm.
air conditioning. And so,
Mm-hmm.
how do you go to your staff, for example? Why? You have to explain it that this is something that is what? Mandatory,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not an arbitrary policy. And so
Mm-hmm.
that means that this practice that you've established has to change. But people have to have buy in.
Right.
because you don't necessarily want an accident to happen in order for people to make changes.
Right.
So, for example, because we live in Boston, there was a gentleman to push to stop the escalator,
Mm.
for example, because there was no education.
Mm-hmm.
There was no public signage.
Mm-hmm.
Something that could have been our policies and procedures. Um, we have to make sure they're practical, they're
Yeah.
functional, and again, practice needs to mirror the policy.
Mm.
And of course,
Yes.
money.
Yes.
I think
I mean, the
investments don't
budget is the
all
budget is the budget.
Mm-hmm.
I think investments don't always mean money. Time is
Mm-hmm.
also very, very important. And if you are leading anything, making the time to be out in community, hearing those stories. I mean, stories are so impactful,
Mm-hmm.
and stories alone can make change. Yes, data can tell us what's happening from that, quantitative, but qualitative
Mm.
data is
Yes,
critical.
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
as tribal folks, storytelling is very important to
Yeah.
keep knowledge alive.
Yeah.
Practices, I think that goes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Investments, practice, accountability, showing up,
Right.
making your time, and then following up, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's with a follow-up call, a follow-up email, a follow-up, and actually putting policy in place. I think that is where I would stand with that question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Some very, very powerful takeaways, especially um, investment doesn't always mean money, right? And as we, in the current political landscape we're currently in right now, right? I think that that's going to be important to remember.
And
So
I
we,
agree, but
mhm,
can I just interject because
of
I want to
course,
just clarify
please,
my comment? Because in
yes.
my world, because I'm an HR professional in my other life, time is
Hmm.
money, and money
Yes.
equates to personnel. So
Hmm.
therefore, that is all interchangeable. So I just want to,
Hmm.
a point of clarification for that. Yes, we
Yeah.
have to have soft systems that are extremely important, the soft side of things, but you cannot establish the soft side of things without hard cash.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. 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 Couldn't agree with you more. And you get,
Because I'm the
hopefully
business
you
owner,
won't.
so I have to look at it from a business perspective as well. So I
Right.
have to balance the two. So when I'm looking
Right.
at things, I have to look at that whole picture. I mean, yes, I want the warms and fuzzies are important. Don't get me wrong, but
Yep.
there's a practical side to this too.
Yes. Yes. Without question. So we're now opening up the webinar to questions and answers. So we have 2 questions so far. Please keep them coming. You can put them again in the chat or in the Q&A box. So our first question from the group is, how can partners challenge traditional/bureaucratic systems to incorporate the practice of belonging and trauma-informed care and social service programs? Either one of you want to go first?
I think providing research and development and really taking a look at the matter and making sure that when you're doing and addressing systems that you do them in bite-sized pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But try to give an overview of how they impact and have a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so I think that it's doable, but that type of advocacy is time consuming, as we know, but more importantly, getting people to really make the commitment
Yeah.
because not everybody can and has the time or can make the commitment. So, you
Mm-hmm.
have to pick and choose and really try to unearth
Mm-hmm.
participants to be able to collect that data to prove
Mm-hmm.
that this
Right.
needs to be looked at.
Right. Right.
I go back just to the relationship. I mean, you can't make change until you build a relationship. And probably
Mm-hmm.
some of these systems may not know what you do or how you do it and why you do it. And so it could be that you have to also build those relationships with the systems. The way you do, you build relationships with families.
With families. Yep. That's a great point. Great point. Okay, so we have one more question, and I think that's probably going to be all we have time for. With limited federal funding to support childcare, how are your organizations finding ways to be innovative and provide holistic continuum of care that is trauma informed and centers the practice of belonging? And is infrastructure and funding needed for this? So again, with limited federal funding, coming down the pike, how are your organizations finding innovative ways to provide holistic care?
Ours are through public-private partnerships. We have to
I can
have those
answer
public
that.
dollars. We have to have those public dollars and then those private to be
Yes.
very innovative and
Yeah.
very less restrictive in how we wrap around those services.
Okay.
And New Mexico, I mean, we are first in the nation to have universal childcare with a big, big funding stream that's coming to support that.
Okay. So private. And Miss Dorothy, did you want to add to that?
Yes, well, Massachusetts has again the Boston Pre-K program, and one of the things that is really, again, the support services that it provides, assisting us with working with the parents, making sure that we have the resources and also the trainings to go along with that. So, I mean, as a community collaborative, they've been wonderful. The other thing I think has been good is that Massachusetts has really made a commitment to early education and care, and they have put their dollars behind it. They have developed
Yeah.
a stipend that people can get. I mean, so, and they're the only people that are doing that. When the feds did it and they took it away, the states that they took it away from, the majority of them did not replenish that pool of money because the feds had taken it away. But Massachusetts stood strong, and what they did was they said, well, okay, we're going to continue to fund it. And they went to us and they asked us, well, how is this helping you? What is it doing for you? And for a lot of us, we
Yeah.
would not be able to hire staff. Mandatory for you to have staff when you're a large child care. So I have to have staff. And
Right.
so who is going to pay the salaries?
Right.
Who's going to pay for the workman's comp, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think that, kudos to Massachusetts in terms of being able to continue to provide the C3 grant to us, because
Yes.
if I didn't have that C3 grant, I'll be honest with you, I would not be operational.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So Massachusetts overall, I think, has supported the early education program. And I think that, Maine has as well through the Boston UPK program. So Massachusetts has been a very good supportive state when it comes to education. And, I'm glad to be here. They're going to increase our numbers. We may at some point go from 10 to 12. So I think that it's really wonderful to be able to have that type of flexibility. They haven't implemented it as yet, but it's been approved by our union. So I think that people here have had some flexibility that they may not necessarily have elsewhere.
Yeah. 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 So it definitely sounds like we all could learn from some of the examples that have been set in Massachusetts and New Mexico. And I'm hearing advocacy, and I saw Giovanna, you put in the chat also, those dollars wouldn't have been possible without parent voice. So it takes us right back to where we started and the importance of including families from the very beginning of whatever we're thinking about. We have to include the families, right? Because they're the ones that are going to be
Recipients.
they're the recipients. They're going to experience it. Then parents help us. We like to say parents are the experts. We treat parents like the experts in their own lives because they are, and that is so true. And that's definitely come through in this conversation today. So I'm going to wrap this up before passing things back over to Diane. I want to thank you, Giovanna and Miss Dorothy, so much for sharing your insights and your experience, your wisdom. Thank you for your commitment to children and families, both in Massachusetts and New Mexico. I definitely learned a lot today. And I hope as we are, leaving today that we are leaving with a renewed appreciation of the power of belonging um, as an ongoing practice. And that, we're reminded of the meaningful change that happens when we center families, when we build trusting relationships, and then when we recognize our own interconnectedness. So I also want to thank the Vital Village for convening this powerful group and having this important conversation. I'm a huge fan of the Vital Village, and anytime, like I said earlier, anytime I'm in their space, I feel like I'm in the right place. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for bringing us all together. And thank you for having me as your moderator as well. So I'm going to now turn it over
Yeah.
to Diana, who's going to close us out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Giovanna, Miss Dorothy, Malkia, for such a powerful and timely conversation. I've just been sitting here, I'm listening deeply of the wisdom you all shared with us today as we really think about what does it look like to deepen these practices of interconnectedness, belonging at all levels and spaces. So hearing from our conversation around thinking about community of care, what does this look like, right, in practice? The importance of consistency and showing up in relationship building and centrally affirming and elevating family voice. Family voice is critical to this work. So thank you so much for this rich conversation. And to our participants, before you leave today, we just had a few announcements with some additional resources and other ways to stay connected, to continue this conversation, as well as opportunities in the village. And so, following this session, you'll also receive in a follow-up email a reflective action guide for you and your personal use or your community use, designed to help you consider some of the things you learned or took away, actions you might consider from this conversation. And that resource is available in Spanish and English. So here's some of the questions, and this is in this handout that will be shared via email. And we also invite you to join us next week for the Peer Learning Cluster's second workshop of their 2026 Advocacy and Community Leadership Series, Strategies for Sustaining Our Work, Preventing Burnout, and Integrating Joy, which is next Tuesday, June 9th at 2 o'clock Eastern. So this workshop will delve into the question of what does it look like to organize our advocacy work in ways that center joy, creativity, and sustained connection. So I think really aligned with some of the conversation we had today. So you can check it out by registering using this QR code or following the link that will be shared in the chat. We also invite you to join us this October for Vital Village Network's 13th National Community Leadership Summit in Boston. Registration is now open, and you can learn more on our website, vitalvillagesummit.org. The theme this year is on cross-pollinating solutions, moving our radical dreams forward. So hope to stay connected and see you in town later this year. To learn more about our approach to building community power through the deep roots of connection, you can check out the Now Playbook on the Now Innovation Forum. This is a how-to guide to transforming community capacity to advance equity, and it features resources, tools, as well as best practices from coalitions across the country on how to build new futures together. You can also find the resource, A Dignity-Centered Guide to Reflecting on Cooperative Funding Structures, a guide focused on exploring funding partnerships that are grounded in equity and power sharing. Thank you so much again for your time and joining us today. We look forward to connecting with you through our forum, social media, and seeing you this spring and summer across the village. Wishing everyone a lovely, safe, connected day. Please take care of yourselves, your families, and your communities and one another. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm sending you lots of light for the rest of your week.